Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to War in the Pacific Admirals Edition against XTRG. This is our play-by-email game against XTRG. We are playing as the Allies. XTRG, another YouTuber, is playing as the Japanese. It is March 22nd of 1942, at least the replay that we're watching is for March 22nd. We will be issuing orders for the March 23rd turn. You can see this turn gets off to a quick start with some submarine action off the Australian coast. A Japanese RO-67 submarine, or I guess the submarine RO-67, launched 2 torpedoes at the Allied destroyer Kilty, which I believe was actually doing an anti-submarine warfare patrol off the coast of Australia. The Japanese fired torpedoes. They didn't hit anything. Our counterattack didn't manage to do anything either. There was no submarine attack against the sub. The good news is, though, that wastes 2 torpedoes on his sub, some ammunition, so he may have to return to port sooner rather than later. Anytime Japanese subs are going to waste their torpedoes by firing it at destroyers, that's pretty much always a good result. 2 torpedoes less for merchant shipping. Although we don't have a lot of merchant shipping in and around the Australian coast because the Japanese have taken New Caledonia. They've driven deep into the South Pacific, far further south than they historically did. And so that means that our ability to do sort of off Australia shipping is curtailed by Japanese Bettys and Nels operating out of the South Pacific that sort of shut down those supply routes. Meanwhile, we've moved into the air operation phases, the AM air operation phase. Looks like there's some thunderstorms over Java, or I'm not sure if the weather forecast changes. It doesn't look like it changes as we jump around the map, so I'm not sure where those thunderstorms are located, but we've got a lot of recon going on, spotting several Japanese surface task forces we'll have to take a look into, and we'll see what goes on there. Crab Sun, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I'm enjoying CK3. We'll be doing that after this, and you know, we'll see how that goes. We'll be picking up where we left off. All right, so some Japanese dive bombers are hitting Bataan. That's sort of run-of-the-mill. That's happening every turn now. Sonya dive bombers here hitting the troops that are surrounded there. Kind of just like target practice for his bombers there. Kneecaps, yeah, it's War in the Pacific by Gary Grigsby. So if you're familiar with War in the East, that's the same developer. It's a older game. The core game, I think, came out in 2006, which was actually a remake of Pacific War from the 1990s by SSI. It lets you play through World War II in 1 turn, 1 day increments. So every turn is 1 day. It is turn-based, and every single unit down to, like, individual aircraft squadrons or even as small as independent companies of troops in terms of ground units. Every single merchant ship, every single warship, even like yard patrol ships are all included. Now, the game that we're playing is actually a modded up version of it that was re-released as sort of a remaster called War in the Pacific Admirals Edition. I think that came out in 2012 or 2011, somewhere around there. Actually, it might have been 2010, but in any event, it's still pretty old. You can see the Japanese are launching a bombing raid near Rangoon. We were wondering with the fall of Singapore recently when we would start to see an air campaign against Rangoon, and it looks like the Japanese are launching a bombing strike here. It might actually be a naval strike, given that they've got Bettys. He doesn't tend to use those in land bombing strikes, but he's escorted by 20 AM-620s against our fighter screen of a lot of fighters. We've got over 30 Hurricanes flying cap, I believe, over 15 P-40 Warhawks. We've got several Air Cobras. The total fighter force at Rangoon is over 100. So if we get them all up, you know, we should stay in a good stead. We're getting a lot of diving reports, so his fighters must be coming in escorting the bombers at their altitude. Because our P-40s were only flying at like 18,000 feet, so if his bombers are coming in below that and his fighters are coming in below that, it's really the only explanation why our P-40s would be diving on them. That's really good because when your fighters dive from above, you get a big speed advantage. The Japanese Zeros are obviously substantially more maneuverable than our aircraft. But again, if you get that speed advantage by a diving attack, it really negates a lot of the advantages that the Zero has. Additionally, the Hurricanes are flying cap at about 32,000, which would be above anything the Zeros can fly at anyway. So you've got Hurricanes diving on them, you've got Warhawks diving on them. I'm not sure if the Air Cobras are diving. They're set to a lower altitude, but we've basically got three or four different cap altitude bands, which means when his fighters come in, if they engage one of the fighter groups that's at a lower altitude, then the other fighters will get a chance to dive on him because he's got to dive down to attack. So you always want to set your cap with multiple altitude bands, so that way it gives you a better chance of getting that diving advantage on the enemy. It's kind of like how Midway was fought, where you've got the Japanese fighters were drawn down to hit the torpedo bombers, and then they were at low altitude, low on ammo, and way out of position for the dive bombers that came in and crippled the Japanese carriers. All right, so we'll fast forward through here a bit. His bombers got ravaged. It looks like one of them got through. They're making a torpedo run on a cargo ship, and their torpedo missed. So they didn't even get a torpedo on target here. You can see he had 10 Bettys, 27 Zeros. We intercepted with 39 Hurricanes of two different varieties, the Hurricane 2A and 2B. We intercepted with 15 P-40, P-39 Airacobras, and 30 Warhawks. So a grand total of 84 fighters, intercepted just his 27 fighters and 10 bombers. The combat report is claiming we shot down 4 of his Zeros and 5 of his Bettys. He didn't get any damage on us. That's a big win for us, a big win in the air war over Rangoon, which may have just started. I guess we'll see. Yeah, you gotta love those Japanese aircraft that don't have any armor to protect against fire. They're pretty damn vulnerable. Meanwhile, it looks like we also destroyed a Betty there. You can see Search G4M1 Betty destroyed by Cap. So there was a recon flight over Rangoon. It got shot down by our fighters that were already flying Cap there. You can see he's doing some recon on our land forces by Pegu as well. He got a recon look at the BFF Brigade. Turkey Shoot over Rangoon should be the name of the episode. You know, Devonta, I was talking with Neuhauser, and I was thinking about, I can't remember I forget what the word is. It's like Kyotsukete or something like that, which basically means like attention or be careful in Japanese. So I was thinking about doing an homage to Achtung Spitfire, the old classic game, and I was gonna basically go with the same equivalent of Japanese, but with Achtung Hurricane or Kyotsukete Hurricane, or however I can't remember the word that he told me it was. Okay, so this is a pretty uneventful turn. Other than the air raid over Rangoon, it doesn't look like there's a ton happening here. Some Japanese attacks on some unoccupied islands, or taking some of these islands in the Solomons and in the Dutch East Indies there, where he's expanding his influence, but not a lot of anything else. Just really the one major air battle, and the rest of this is sort of just units moving around and mopping up on bases he had already taken. So we'll have to take a look at what the turn looks like, but not a huge result, I don't think, for this turn. Other than the air battle was obviously the major event, but nothing else really going on. Jaguar 14, thank you very much for the follow. That's appreciated. If only I could have upgrade options for those Air Cobras to turn them into King Cobras. Was there a fighter that was called the King Cobra? Or is that just a joke about the snake? What was is that the P400 that was the King Cobra? I do have one squadron of P400s. I think they were a squadron on the U.S. West Coast that had P38s that I swapped out for the... Oh, the P63? I don't get them? Darn. It's Lend-Lease to the USSR? Is it much better than the P39? Do you get them in 46 Co when the Allies get a ton of reinforcements? Oh, the U.S. Army didn't use them. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a look here at Rangoon. First off, let's take a look at the intel report. So we can see, according to the intelligence report, 16 Japanese aircraft were lost this turn in air-to-air combat compared to 0 Allied aircraft. No aircraft destroyed on the field, 1 Japanese aircraft by flak, and 2 by op losses. We did lose 5 aircraft via op losses. Basically, they took damage and were unable to land, but they weren't considered an air-to-air victim. You can see the Japanese lost 10 G4M1 Bettys, so that's a very good result for us. 10 experienced pilots of planes that excel in naval bombing, or naval torpedo strikes. Equally as good, the Japanese lost 7 A6M20s, so a large number of Japanese Zeros, presumably also with experienced pilots, go down. They also lost 2 Ki-43 1C Oscars to op losses. I wonder where they were flying. One Sonia was lost to flak over Bataan. We lost one Catalina as an op loss, probably in those air transport missions that are flying troops into Rangoon out of the Dutch East Indies. We lost one P-40E as an ops loss, so maybe it took some damage and crashed before it could land over the Battle of Rangoon. So I think what we'll say is the Battle of Rangoon was a 17-to-1 KD ratio for us. Pretty damn good there. The Hudson ones, we lost one of those. We lost one Blenheim 4, and there was one I-16-3 that was lost as an ops loss, probably a training accident over China. All told, the turn ended up resulting in 19 Japanese aircraft lost and 5 Allied losses. Granted, those are protected by fog of war, so these numbers are not perfect. But you can see here so far in the war, the Japanese have lost about 300 aircraft more than the Allies. So it's been a pretty rough game so far for the Japanese aircraft. If we take a look at our pilot aces here, T. Cole, who had been our leading ace, is still our leading ace, although he was killed a little while back. J.L. Brownwell, also another ace with 6 kills, was killed a while back. I don't remember the rest of these guys, if C. Mott or if D.L. Obert, if they were killed recently or not. It says we lost one pilot KIA today. I don't think any of them were aces. We actually might have a few more aces, though, here. You can see we've got quite a few. I'm not going to count that all up, but there's quite a few aces here. 3 guys with 7 kills, maybe like 5 or 6 guys with 6 kills, and a slightly more with 5. So the ace tally is growing here. A lot of H-81A3 pilots. None of them would have been over Rangoon this turn. So those are the Flying Tigers. That's a P-40B variant that flies out of China. It has its own designation, the H-81A3, because I believe that's what it was referred to in China, but also because that it allows the game to control the resupply of aircraft to China more strictly, based on the fact that it's a separate model. It doesn't the supply mechanic wouldn't be strong enough in the game to prevent resupply to China if the aircraft were in the pool and they met the supply rules, but allow them in Australia but not in China. So they give it a different variation. Several P-40E Warhawk pilots. Only a couple of British aces. We've got one British ace, J.R. Hutchinson, pilot from the 242 RAF group flying Hurricane Bs. And then we've also got an Australian ace, New Zealand ace, or that's J.R. Hudson. J. Parker is the British ace. 2 of them, 2 Commonwealth aces. That's it so far in the war. Do I get things like B-25s and B-26s? I do. Fitbid, we'll look at that in a second. No ships were sunk today, so we get a last turn. No ships sunk. Yeah, so if we go ahead and we take a look at our air units in Rangoon, you can see they've taken a little bit of damage. Some of the aircraft are down for maintenance. 2 of the Air Cobras are currently offline. 1 of the P-40Es are offline. If we take a look at the planes here, we can see that they're repairing. One of them is going to take 6 days. One of them is going to take 1. We also have 10 aircraft in the pool there, so these guys should be okay. I'm actually just going to draw forward all 4 aircraft to fill out the unit here to get it back up to 25 aircraft. So those guys are coming in, but when you pull reserves from the pool, it does take a little while for them to arrive. You can see 3 days for maintenance to get those aircraft up and running. Nonetheless, 6 aircraft are offline today. If we take a look at the pilots, we can see several of them gained experience this turn. A green highlighted number means they gained experience. So FM Junior, Armstrong Junior or whatever, 67, so he gained 1 experience in air combat. His overall experience level went up. His Patrick, you can see his air skill went up. His overall experience went up. So you can see several of the pilots here gained experience in their combat, and that's going to be true for most of the units here. So for only 1 KIA, our fighter pilots also gained quite a bit of experience, and even some of the lesser experienced ones like J.I.B. Donaldson gained some fighter skills and then also gained some experience here. Take a look through. These are some of our transport groups, and you can see some of the RAF groups also gained some experience. We've got a level 80 experienced pilot, flight leader, whatever, Carey, squadron leader, Carey, here is at level 80 experience. Pretty damn good experienced pilots in some of these units. A nice mixture, though. We've got a mixture of lesser experienced pilots and more experienced pilots. B.D. Wagner here of the 24th Pursuit Group, 17th Pursuit Squadron of P-40Es, and 83 experience. That dude's a stud. He's also an ace. He's got 7 kills to his name. Okay, so that's that. If we take a look at the shipping in Rangoon, you can see they're all currently unloading supplies. So we've got multiple convoys here in Rangoon unloading supplies to try and get some supplies into China. You can see here supply levels are going down on these. Some of the shipping is actually already finished unloading. These guys aren't even docked, these 2 squadrons. These guys just arrived here, about 20,000 tons of shipping. No room at the docks for them, so they're in the roadstead, kind of unloading very inefficiently. But they just arrived today. Their capacity's at 100. So another 30,000 supplies arrived today. Meanwhile, there's about, 8,000 supply left on the ships that were already previously there. And you can see this convoy is loaded up, and several of them are done unloading as well. If we take a look at Rangoon's supply situation, it's got 105,886 supply. That's good news for us there. The supply is moving forward into the forward bases here where our different units are located. Our troops in the jungle here have all built level 1 fortifications south of Pegu here near Moman. He now has 15 units at Moman, so now that Singapore fell, it is likely he's going to start railing, and he may have already started it, many of his ground units up to Moman to begin the drive on Burma. So as we got these troops behind this river defensive line, they're also digging in, and the terrain here is wooded terrain, so that gives them a ×2 defense plus the level 1 fortifications. It'll make them much stronger and more resistant to enemy attacks. The road systems could theoretically allow him to bypass our troops south of Pegu. He could move them up to this hex up here, and he'll still be in supply. And then you can see these partial lines that don't quite extend into this hex indicates while he can't efficiently move supplies across in these directions, he can move his units a little bit more quickly than otherwise. So he could try and jump into our rear that way. So we do have to be careful of that. If we start seeing troops show up here, we'll have time to fall back because we've got actual roadways. But he may jump into our rear here and try and interrupt us there. So that's good news. We've got our troops to Seoyoung to prevent a paratrooper landing here. And then we're beginning to shift Chinese troops, trying to get them into Burma to help the defense there. In China, you can see his troops are still moving toward Guilin. We bombed them with 16 Chinese bombers to try and slow them up, to force them to deploy in combat formation. The good news for us there is that our troops have arrived. So we have 3 more corps of troops that just arrived. That brings our total defensive strength in this base up to 1,800. They also have level 3 fortifications, so that's good for us. These 3 corps, the 53rd, 99th, and the 79th, 53rd, and 99th Chinese corps all just arrived today. The 66th Corps arrived 2 days ago, and so we're bringing our defensive strength up here. We've got just shy of 30,000 infantry and 25,000 support troops here. Yeah, so we're bringing supply across the hump out of Miyataka out of Lido in India to try and bring additional supplies up. I'm probably going to move the LB-30 Liberators. They're very useful in transporting supplies because they're so big, but they also have the best range of any of our units by far at 24 is their extended radius, so they're really good recon aircraft too. They were used in the Battle of the Atlantic against submarines. We don't really get any reinforcements of them right now. There's none in the pool, but it will probably pull that squadron out or maybe replace them with B-17s to move those LB-30s elsewhere. Let's see here. You said the 66 needs to go to China. The 66 may go to China eventually. Oh, no, it's not going to go to, Burma? No, this one's not going to go to Burma. The units that we're sending to Burma are going to be from the 5th Chinese Corps. Not these. Where are they? I can't really find them. Here. So the 5th Chinese Corps is what we're going to eventually move to Burma. You can see here there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different divisions, but all told, when the full TOE or tabulation of units, if all these units get built out to their full strength, all 4 or 5 of them, you're talking about a unit that's got over 1,000 assault value. if we can get all these guys over there. They're currently, three of the units are marching. Several of the units are still at bases waiting for reserves to show up to replace them. And then once they do that, we are going to move them all into Burma. Anywhere we can go on the offensive, Devonta? Eventually. Yeah, I'm losing too many of them to ops losses. Good point, Jack Tank. I'm planning on moving him after this turn. Nothing really else happened in China this turn, so not a lot else to show there. If we look at Bataan, where he's bombing, 12,000 supplies left, so the supplies are going down there. They're all still in good shape, but the supplies is less than 2 full replacements of supply for these guys, so they're slowly wearing away. Additionally, the troops in Mindanao have been making valiant stands, but they're running critically low on supplies as well. The best unit left, the 102nd Filipino Army Infantry Division, is at less than 50% supply. These units are going to start suffering massive disruption losses due to supply in the very near future. And so the rest of the Philippines will fall to the Japanese before too long. We thought he was maybe going to move from Bandar Jasmine in toward Java, but he hasn't landed on Java yet. We also did pick up multiple convoys up here in the north. These guys are moving northwest, so they're moving in this direction. You can see it looks like there's some tankers and patrol boats up here, so we've got one sub. We may try and intercept these guys. A couple subs come up from the Dutch East Indies. We want to make sure we give his tankers as many subs as we can, so we'll have to see what we've got there. I'm thinking, by the way, if we move back up to Sri Lanka... All right, we've got a bunch of shipping there that I'm moving around, but then we've also got almost 70,000 fuel in Sri Lanka. We've got another 40,000 that's headed to Colombo on a couple of tankers from the Middle East. We've also got, I think, a couple other tanker groups here. These guys are headed back to the Middle East. I know I've got a lot of other tankers moving around here. A bunch of fuels currently unloading or already unloaded at Karachi. 50,000 fuel coming down here from the Middle East, 16,000 supply, and 40,000 fuel here. So about another 100,000 fuels coming south from the Middle East here. Several other task forces are on their way back to Abadan. The carriers are still at Hobart, south of Australia. They're currently repairing or waiting in the roadsteads here, doing some minor repairs. You can see here that the Enterprise and the Lexington both still have 2 or 3 systems damage, but the Saratoga's down to 1. She should be down to 0 damage tomorrow. And then the Yorktown is already fully repaired. The British carrier here, which fits in the at the dockyard, is finishing some minor repairs as well. She should be finished tomorrow. So the carriers will probably set sail tomorrow and get going. We'll probably move them south to New Zealand. And the reason for that is we've detected Japanese surface task forces. Last turn, I believe it was at Tulagi, or 2 turns ago, it was at Tulagi. We also spotted some stuff near Ifate a couple turns ago. We've spotted potentially a small Japanese task force here that's moving southeast. We've got a cruiser and a destroyer spotted, so they're moving in this direction. It could just be a raid on our supply line south of Fiji. It could be a bombardment task force in preparation for a Japanese landing on Fiji. It could be carriers, and all we spotted is the light cruisers here. So we'll have to take a look. If we take a look at the intelligence, we don't really have any indication of what those guys are. I don't have any indication of anyone preparing an attack or anything like that on Fiji. We've got different locations of different Japanese units. We've got the Imperial Guards / C Division is located at 5556. So they were at Singapore not long ago. We'll have to take a look at where they're at now. 5556 is probably in the vicinity of Singapore still. 5556, was it? Huh. So they're moving toward Molman. So he's already gotten them all the way up here? Did he split them before Singapore fell? How the hell would he have gotten them there that quickly? Engineer Regiment is also at 5556. So he split the Imperial Guards Division, which suffered very heavy casualties in the Battle of Singapore. He's also got an Engineer Regiment here. So they're both within 1 hex of Molman. That means he is preparing for a major push into Burma here very soon. based on that intelligence, because the hex that they're located at is just south of Mulman. I imagine they're located on trains, which is probably why they're moving. So, well, there's not even a rail line that far north. So I don't think he can do a strat move into Mulman. Unless he transported him via sea somehow into Tavoy, but I don't think he did that. We would have seen him. I'm not sure how he got there. That's pretty damn fast either way, unless they've been moving that way for a while. Chinese troops are on the way. I mean, we're doing the best we can there. Meanwhile, what else were we looking at? So Fiji is preparing for the defense here. You can see Fiji is I think, similar to Rangoon in terms of its air strength. Doesn't have the Hurricanes, which makes it a little bit weaker, but you can see it's got 161 aircraft located on Fiji. If we just count the fighters, we've got 100 exactly of them. We've got 45, actually 55, 64 P-40s, mostly of the B variant. And then we've got 36 F-4, F-3 Wildcat Marine fighters located here. We also do have some punching power at Fiji. We've got 13 A-20 Havocs, and we've got 13 B-26 Marauders. The pilots currently are set to naval attack. They've been standing down for a little bit. They're not the greatest pilots or crew. They're not very experienced. They're not totally green, but they're not going to do the best job against enemy naval attacks. But we have stood all of these guys down last turn to get their fatigue levels low so that they're not tired when the enemy comes calling. We also do have one more air unit here, or we have more air groups here, some Hudsons at Nadi next door. We've also got, I know we've got some dive bombers. I think they're also located at Suva. We've got some 36 Dauntlesses, so SBD 1s and 3s and whatnot. So we've got 36 Dauntlesses, and then we've got 26 of medium bombers of the A-20 and B-26 varieties. So all told, that gives us about 26 and 36. So we've got 62 bombing aircraft of various varieties and 100 fighters located at Suva. You know, we've got a Marine regiment on Vavua. We've got an Army regiment at Suva, as well as a New Zealand regular Army unit at Suva, and then we've got a bunch of Australian militia at Nadi. Additionally, we've got a Marine regiment at Pago, as well as some other defensive units here. So these three islands would be a little bit more challenging for him to take. They kind of form a triangle of sort of supporting bases. The one weak spot, if he is moving troops in, maybe at Tongatapu, where we've got a base force unit, but only a handful of infantry squads. If he does move south, though, he could also land at Kendavu Island here. It would be an unopposed landing. He can build up to a level 4 airbase, but that would probably be unadvised for him to land on any of these bases in and around Fiji because they're too close to Fiji that our bombers could hit him pretty hard. He could go wider. He could go south toward Raoul Island, but we do have shipping closer to New Zealand. So if he does try and sneak south there, we can send a surface task force up or try and scrape together some destroyers to intercept him going that way. We destroyed some Japanese destroyers trying to land on Norfolk Island not long ago. Meanwhile, we did land on Baker Island a turn ago with the 1st Marine Defense Battalion here. Just a handful of troops, a little bit over 300 troops landed on Baker Island, so that's in our hands. I debated bombarding Canton Island. Baker was unoccupied, but Canton does have about 2,400 Japanese soldiers. Looks like he also has some air units, probably just patrol craft. We were repositioning our bombers down here. He has not, or our battleships down here. He has not spotted them at all, but you can see we've got the British battleship Warspite, and then we've got 5 American battleships all in good shape as they move south toward Tahiti. All of these guys have upgrades coming later this year, but they haven't hit their upgrade timer yet. The exception is a couple of the destroyers, which when we get to New Zealand or Australia with these guys, we'll trigger those upgrades. We do have a bunch of heavy cruiser upgrades coming in a few days in April. We'll have to make sure that we cycle our heavy cruisers through upgrade phases because that'll give our cruisers radar. Meanwhile, you can see here at Pearl, we've got several ships that are under repair. The Nautilus suffered a bunch of systems damage when she ran out of fuel and basically drifted for a few days. The battleships California and Tennessee are still repairing their Pearl Harbor damage. The Oklahoma's almost repaired a torpedo she took on her way to that Midway bombardment. Yes, Midway fell. That's kind of about it. I don't have a lot going on this turn. It's a pretty quiet turn. We are doing a fair bit of logistics. We are switching around different supply convoys here. We're sending some troop convoys out to bring some reinforcements to different islands. You know, you can see this task force here with several destroyers of tankers, and tankers has 60,000 fuel on the way to Australia. This one here, another 60,000 fuel. Actually, these guys are going to New Zealand. These guys are going to Australia. So 120,000 fuel between those two groups. We've got some U.S. base forces, field artillery, and combat infantry or combat engineer units here on the way to Kyotsukete Islands. That's a long way, so I think the one place that I'm a little worried about, they're going to stop over in Tahiti to refuel, but then they're going to swing all the way around Australia. This is a long boat ride, but I hope they're paying customers up to Kyotsukete Islands. I don't think they'll get there in time. We have 2 light cruisers, by the way, ported there. But I really want to make sure we put a garrison into Kyotsukete, because once he takes Java and the Dutch East Indies, he's going to be able to use medium bombers to push air control west, which will hinder our supply line between India and Sri Lanka and Australia. Because we lost New Caledonia and his medium bombers can push well south, they can basically hit any target like as far south as this. It makes our convoys from the U.S. West Coast have to thread a narrow gap between New Zealand and Norfolk Island. And if he landed a strong force on Norfolk and Lord Howe, there's not a lot we could do to stop him. And then he'd be able to push his bombers, you know, basically force our convoys to run into New Zealand and the southern tip of that at that, or around New Zealand. So we've been using Perth as our primary supply point for Australia because it's just been an easier route. First off, we brought like 300,000 fuel out of the Dutch East Indies before those fell. But then we also have been bringing in fuel and supplies from both Sri Lanka and from South Africa into Perth. But if he gets air units on Kyotsukete and he builds that airfield up a bit, and he has Nels and Bettys, they're going to be able to reach out to here. They're going to be able to shut down a huge portion, or at least massively divert our shipping on its route to Perth. So that would not be ideal. So I do have troops on the way there. The guys that are over here that are coming that way are probably not going to be the troops that get there. I also have some troops coming in from South Africa that I think will get there more quickly. But who knows? I mean, he could get there much more quickly than I could bring reinforcements if he sends like a fast transport or something. Meanwhile, Sabang, we're trying to get some of our ground units that we pulled out of Singapore out. We've got the SSV brigade has now arrived here, or elements of it. It's got 31 infantry squads currently at Sabang. We've also got the 2nd Loyal Battalion, which has been mostly pulled out via air from Sabang and into Rangoon. If we take a look at Rangoon, we can see the 2nd Loyal is where... Well, where are they? Are they not here? Did I put them on ships, actually? Well, those are the Punjab Battalion that's on its way to Rangoon. Oh, they're already on transports. So these guys are, well, okay, so they're being loaded on this convoy here on the Colac. So we've got, or no, wrong unit. Where am I clicking here? Oh, they're the ones on the Arwa. So we've already loaded all but a handful of these guys on this transport here, about 10 British infantry squads, a little bit over 200 troops on this group here. They're finishing loading up this turn. They should be at sea tomorrow. Meanwhile, the Punjab Battalion is already at sea on its way to Rangoon. And then we've got the SSV brigade or battalion or whatever of it, whatever we call this thing. It was a brigade, but the majority that got left behind at Singapore. There were about 700, 800 troops that were lucky and got out via air transport. And so these guys may end up going to Port Blair to stop his paratrooper landing there, but they're not in great shape. They're mostly disabled, so that probably doesn't make a ton of sense until we get more supply into Port Blair. We'll probably fly them directly into Rangoon, and then maybe reinforce, as we bring more troops into Rangoon, maybe reinforce Port Blair with the 1st Gloucestershire Battalion, which is a pretty good British unit here of about just shy of 1,000 men, 36 infantry squads. We may send them in that way. No Dutch troops in New Guinea. New Guinea has largely fallen to the Japanese. Port Moresby fell a couple turns ago. We're trying to pull some of the troops that were driven out of Moresby into the jungle out via transport aircraft. So you can see... Well, these guys are set to recon. Are they at Charterstown? Yeah, so we're trying to pull some of those troops out Where are we pulling them to? This doesn't look like any of the units here. Where are these guys pulling out again? Sky trains. Oh. Did they already pull some troops out? First RAF with squadron? No. Maybe some of these base force units? I can't really remember. I don't see what they were. It's not Townsville. It's Cairns. They're flying into Cairns. So we're pulling some troops out. We pulled the 2 4th Independent Company and 2 7th, I think, out. And also parts of the 53rd Australian Battalion. So we got 10 infantry squads out there of high-quality British or Australian infantry squads, CMF infantry sections, 1 Vickers section, and 2 support units of the 53rd. So the 53rd still has elements left behind, still 1 infantry section, 23 support, 2 Vickers sections, but most of what had survived and was driven into the jungle of the 53rd has been withdrawn, at least the combat elements. We'll continue working on getting more of those troops out. I'd love to get some of the 45th Indian Brigade out, the Port Moresby Brigade, those guys. They won't survive long in the jungle though, so we'll see how long we can kind of keep them going. But yeah, I think that's about it, guys. Probably for today's episode. The Hermes, the one other thing about the Hermes light carrier is it is on its way. It will probably take one of those American Marine fighter squadrons at Suva and put them on board and base them off the Hermes. I'm also debating, we've got another British carrier that's arriving in the Indian Ocean before too long. I'm just trying to see where they are. They're on their way. They'll be on map in 3 days. We'll move them to Sri Lanka and have them refuel there. We'll have them join up with some of these surface elements and these heavy cruiser elements out of Sri Lanka. And then I may bring them here northwest of Blair and maybe even use them in an airstrike on Port Blair. The main thought would be to use a small British carrier task force to expose the fact that it's in the Indian Ocean or in the Bay of Bengal before rapidly withdrawing them to safety. And the thought there is it would let him know that we have at least one carrier in that area to keep him guessing on where the rest of our carriers may be. He may see through it and know it for what it is, but if I can make him think some of my carrier forces are north here in the Bay of Bengal, he may not know that we've got 5 carriers down here in the Tasmanian Sea, and then we've also got the USS Hornet on its way, which just joined the campaign in the theater from the U.S. East Coast. It'll be arriving in theater in the Eastern Pacific tomorrow. It's going to have to go to Pearl to refuel, but she's arriving tomorrow. So we'll see if we can do that to kind of make XTRG wonder, like, what does he really have and what's going on? Bless me. Anyway, that's probably going to do it for today's episode. I don't have a lot else I want to show or talk to you about. It's kind of a transition period still. It's very interesting to see that he's got these large numbers of ground units potentially arriving at Mulman. He's already got 15 units here, so that's kind of the main thing to keep an eye on. Who knows how long our troops here in the jungle can hold out. We can bring a few more troops south from Pegu. I don't want to leave Pegu too lightly defended because he could land troops in our rear in an amphibious end-around, kind of an Incheon landing type thing. But we could bring the 17th Indian Division down to support if necessary, while still leaving, I think, a sufficient force in the rear of 130, 140 assault value to stop a landing at Pegu. If we bring the 17th Division south, that'll give us another 200 plus assault value. I'm leaving these guys here now because they're resting. They're trying to get these Indian infantry sections here rested up and back into strength, so we could add another 46 assault value here and bring us over 300. That would be nice. I do have the Burma headquarters unit that's moving into Pegu. They haven't arrived yet, but Pegu is a little bit short in support, so it needs 552 support at the base. It only has 481, which will slow down substantially any attempt to rest troops. So the Burma Corps is moving toward Pegu. They will arrive tomorrow. That additional 90 support at Pegu should get these guys enough support at the base to get these guys rapidly back in shape. They've got plenty of supply. It's just a matter of getting the units the support they need so they can all get out of disruption. I don't have enough points yet to unlock another division. I think we're about 4 days away from that, so I need about 1,600 points to unlock a U.S. division on the East Coast. We've got 1,400. We get 50 per day. So in about 4 days, we should have enough to unlock... which division is it? I think they're at Tacoma. It's the 41st Infantry Division here. So we need 1,900 for the 41st? I thought there was a division that we only needed 1,600. Was I wrong on that? That's closer to 7 days then, if that's true. I thought there was another division somewhere around here that was only 1,600. But I could be mistaken on that. Oh, these guys. Okay. Oh wait, no, they can't. They can't unlock anywhere else. Oh no, I think they can. I think these'll light up once we have enough political points. So we can only move them to restricted headquarters right now. But I believe the 27th Infantry Division will be ready in about 4 days based off this. It currently only takes about 1,593 to unlock these guys. They have 200 infantry squads. They're just as large as the other units. I have reinforcements turned off, so the cost of the unit to unlock it is based off of the total makeup of the unit. So right now the unit is under strength by about 73 infantry squads, about 8 combat infantry sections, some light machine gun and heavy machine gun elements, and some anti-aircraft and anti-tank weapons. So once we turn reinforcements on, these guys will fill up, and then they'll cost like 2,000 or so to unlock. But because we've got the reinforcements turned off, it allows us to get them sort of switched their headquarters a little bit more cheaply. So the 27th Infantry Division is going to be the division that we unlock next. Not sure where we should probably give them an objective to prepare for. They can start doing their preparations now so that they're ready to fight when they arrive in theater. I'm guessing we'll launch an offensive against New Caledonia or against the New Hebrides. One or the other is one of our early counter-strikes to try and start. I don't know if we're going to move up the entire Solomon Islands chain, but I do want to take New Caledonia and Ifate and Tana to open up more efficient supply routes in toward Australia so that we don't have to divert so far south. So I do think there's going to be a major campaign in the New Hebrides and New Caledonia in mid to late 1942. We'll probably have to see an air campaign or a midway type battle before that's really realistic. But we'll see. They may also move to reinforce if the Battle of Fiji starts or something like that. They may be on the way there. That being said, guys, I'm going to wrap up this portion of the stream. We're not done yet tonight. This will probably be a bit of a longer night tonight, but I am going to do a Crusader Kings 3 stream here. So I'd love it if you guys stick around here. I've got to update the chat stuff. I've also got to throw stuff from the wash into the dryer. So I'm going to take like a minute or two break. We'll keep the stream up. But yes, we're going to keep going tonight. Time Gunner, we are running a mod. I forget the name of it. It's not like on the website. The gameplay is vanilla, but the map is a mod, so the art is modified. So let's go ahead and save this. All right, and that's going to do it for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed our return to War in the Pacific Admirals Edition and our play-by-email game against XTRG. Until next time, thanks for watching, guys, and I'm out.